Yo, what's going on guys? Cultimush back at it with a $500 gaming PC build. Now, building a budget-end gaming PC recently has been a struggle since so many graphics cards are out of stock like the RX 480 and so many graphics cards have been fluctuating in price. So depending on the time you're looking, you might be able to get a vastly superior PC 1 month versus the next. Now, without further ado, let's get right into this $500 gaming PC for September 2016. If you end up building this PC, I think you're really gonna like the performance it offers for a very cheap price. So starting things off with the CPU, I went with the Intel Core i3 6100 3.7 GHz dual core processor. Now yes, this is a dual core processor. Obviously, it does have hyper-threading, adding 2 virtual cores, but for what it is, the i3 6100 does a really good job at its price point. If you're building a $500 PC, it's very hard to fit an i5 in it, and if you do, you're gonna have to skimp out a lot on your video card, which at the end of the day is the most important part of the build. At least in gaming builds anyway. The CPU is obviously also very important, but the i3 6100 is gonna give you enough performance for the money. It's cheap at $110, and I think at this budget, it's the best option available right now. Moving on to the motherboard, I went with the Gigabyte GA-B150M-DS3H Micro ATX LJ1151 motherboard. Now, this motherboard comes at a very cheap price at $57 after a $10 mail-in rebate. If you're spending that much money on a motherboard, you can't expect a world beater, but this motherboard is gonna do everything you need it to. It's got 4 RAM slots up to DDR4 2133 and up to 64 gigabytes of max memory. No Crossfire support and no SLI support, but considering this is a $500 PC, you're probably not looking to go for a Crossfire SLI configuration anyway, especially considering with an i3 6100, it just wouldn't make a lot of sense. It's got 6 SATA 6 gigabit per second ports and onboard USB 3 headers, so at $57, this motherboard is gonna get the job done, and it gives you a few nice features given its price, but the main reason you're picking this motherboard up is the price. It's so efficient, and it's a great option for this build. Moving on to the memory, I went with G.Skill Ripjaw Series 8GB, 2 4GB sticks running at DDR4 2133. This RAM is available for $37, and I still think that 8GB of RAM is enough in budget and builds. I know there's a lot of games that are beginning to recommend 16GB, but personally, I have 8GB of RAM in my PC, and I haven't really experienced any limitations having only 8GB of RAM. I've been able to run games like Star Wars Battlefront, Deus Ex Mankind Divided, Doom, all fine with 8GB of RAM. I also have a pretty nice PC outside of that, but you guys get the idea. 8GB of RAM, in my opinion, is still fine. The motherboard does have 4 RAM slots, so in the future, if you do want to go for a 16GB configuration, that option will be completely open. You'll just have to pick up another kit of this RAM and you'll have 16GB and you'll be good to go. But for now, I think you guys should pick up 8GB for only $37, and in the future, make that upgrade if it becomes a necessity. Moving on to storage, no SSD in this build, just a Western Digital Caviar Blue 1TB hard drive. It's $47, it's a terabyte of storage, and considering that you're building a gaming PC, you probably want a lot of storage because you're probably going to be downloading a lot of games. And also given the fact that game file sizes are increasing every year, you've got games that are 40, 50, 60, 70 gigabytes, and if you want to download games like that, a 120GB SSD or even a 240GB SSD is just not going to be enough, at least in my opinion. If you're the kind of guy that you think you can get by with 240GB, by all means pick up an SSD. I just think the majority of you guys will be better off with a mechanical drive and getting more storage. Moving on to the GPU, I wanted to put in the RX 480 in this build. The 4GB models were supposed to go for $200. One of those GPUs are sold out, and when I do see the 480 4GB models in stock, they're usually like $230 to $240. So unfortunately, you really can't pick those up in a $500 build. Rather, I would recommend the RX 470. The Asus model is available on Amazon for $200, and this is also a very good GPU. It actually doesn't lag far behind the RX 480. A lot of the 1080p performance is somewhat comparable. Sure, you're gonna lose a few frames here and there, but this GPU is still gonna give you a really great 1080p gaming experience. And considering you're fitting this GPU in a $500 build, the quality you're playing your games at is actually gonna be reasonably high. Sure, it's not gonna be 60 FPS maxed out at all games, but 45 FPS at high settings is still a very great experience. Playing games like The Witcher 3 at high settings at 50 FPS is gonna look really freaking good. Same with Doom, same with Deus Ex, Metal Gear Solid 5, whatever games you want to play, you'll be able to play them really well, just not maxed out at the tippy top performance. But if you're only spending $500 on a PC, you're probably not expecting that anyway, so that'll be fine. Moving on to the power supply, I went with the EVGA 500 watt 80+ Plus Bronze Certified PSU. It's available for $30 on Newegg. It's a fairly low-end power supply, and honestly, if you do have a little bit of extra cash, I would recommend picking up an XFX or a Seasonic power supply. Maybe pick up a 550 or a 600 watt. But if not, the EVGA 500 watt PSU is still gonna get the job done. 500 watts is pretty high, actually. I know a lot of people don't think that way, and they think you have to get a 750 watt power supply, but that's not the case, especially with a build like this where you're not getting the highest end components in the world. Given how cheap it is, the EVGA 500 watt power supply is a very solid pickup. Finally, for the case, I went with the Corsair $200 ATX mid-tower case. I've recommended this case a lot, and the reason being is that it's a very good mid-tower case at a very good price. On Newegg, after a $5 off promo code and a $10 mail-in rebate, this case comes to $45, which for a quality mid-tower case is a very, very good price. Sure, aesthetically, it's not gonna blow you away or anything. It doesn't have a really nice side window, but if you're building a PC on a budget, aesthetics really shouldn't be your top priority, and the Corsair $200 is great for budget PCs. So that's gonna wrap up this video, guys. If you enjoyed, hit the like button. If not, you can hit the dislike button. If you have a request for a future video, you can also leave that in the comments section down below. And as always, guys, thanks for watching, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.